Today I wanted to talk to you about using alcohol when you cook. Now, I'm not talking about drinking alcohol while you're cooking, that's okay too. You got to be careful though, don't drink too much. You can burn yourself, you can cut yourself, not safe. All right, so be very cautious about drinking while you're cooking. However, that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about actually putting alcohol in the food or using alcohol to cook the food. There's different ways of using it. Now, first of all, putting alcohol in the food. Let me explain that. My Texas red chili recipe has a lot of alcohol in it. It's like a cup and a half of bourbon, all right? There's a lot of bourbon in there. Another way of cooking with alcohol, and that's to add flavor. The alcohol gets cooked out, the flavor of the bourbon remains behind, and it enhances the chili. Another way of cooking with alcohol, let's say I have cooked a steak and I want to produce a beautiful sauce with what's left in the pan. So you have that burned on, well, not burned on, caramelized coating on the bottom of the pan. And we're going to break that loose with a little bit of wine, okay? And then once the wine breaks that loose and comes up to a bubble, then I start adding in pats of butter and whisking those in. It emulsifies into the wine, and I cook that for just a few minutes, and suddenly I have a beautiful wine and butter sauce that's flavored with the flavors of the meat that caramelized, and it is fantastic. So there we're cooking with alcohol for a whole different purpose. The alcohol in that case is simply used as a medium to build a beautiful sauce. Again, the alcohol itself gets cooked off. Another example of cooking with alcohol. Let's say that, let's see here. Let's say you wanted to make a flambe. Cherries Jubilee, Bananas Foster, they're both dessert flambés, okay? Now I want to use the Bananas Foster as a good example. In the Bananas Foster, we start by making a syrup. And then to that syrup, we add alcohol, strong alcohol. In fact, it's Bacardi, I shouldn't say a brand name. It's a 151 proof rum, and I think that name I just said doesn't make it anymore. I think you have to buy some other brand. It's still available, so we put a high alcohol content rum in there. Well, it's not to add alcohol. What it is to give us long cooking. Because right after I put the alcohol in there, I'm going to slip bananas into it and then light it on fire. And when that happens, the bananas will cook in the fire. And that's what we're doing, is we're cooking bananas, it makes them sweet, and then we serve that and that beautiful sauce that's made with it over the top of ice cream. So there we're cooking with alcohol, and in that case, not all of the alcohol cooks out. Bananas Foster has a little bit of a kick to it. It wouldn't be the good dessert that it is without that, though. So there's different ways of cooking with alcohol. I have viewers that say, I don't drink alcohol. And I say to them, fine, don't drink alcohol. What does that have to do with cooking with it? Well, I don't want it in my house. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. There's various reasons. Makes sense. So if you don't want to do that, find substitutes. But understand something. If it is, if there's some moral objection or whatever to the use of the alcohol, then you might want to look a little closer in your kitchen. Because if you've got things like, let's say, vanilla extract, guess what? It's got alcohol. If you got peppermint extract or whatever, those have alcohol in them. Another thing, if you've ever made fresh bread, while the bread is rising, the yeast is developing, the yeast is producing two substances. It's producing, number one, carbon dioxide, but number two, it produces alcohol while it's puffing the bread up, which is the reason you can smell a slight alcohol-like flavor when you're making bread, because it's there, all right? So it's around us. It's a part of what we are, because yeast is a part of what we are. Don't be afraid of the use of alcohol when it comes to cooking. Does it all cook off? Yeah, if you do it right, it sure does. Now, here's the thing. It's all about boiling temperatures. Let's say I have a pot of substance X and I'm going to put alcohol Y into substance X. So what's going to happen there is substance X, which is mostly water, is going to start boiling at 212 degrees. Substance Y, which is the alcohol that I put in there, well, that boils at 173 degrees. So guess what steam comes out of the pot first? Ah, you got it right there. The same way a still works. The first steam that comes up as the liquid comes up in temperature, the first steam is the alcohol. You leave your lid off, or at least cocked early in the cooking, to vent off your alcohol. All right? Just that simple. Don't worry about it being in the air because it comes out so slowly that there will not be any combustion going on. That having been said, there needs to be a note of caution. And I want to show you a clip. It's not going to be the same quality of video as this, but it'll show you exactly what happens. So let's take a look at this real quick. This is Bananas Foster and what a flashover looks like. Now guys, at this point, if yours hasn't lit up, you simply take a spoonful of this, light it, and lower it back down into this, and that will light your fire. We'll do that here in just a moment. But first, we want this to look as neat as possible, so I'm going to lower the light level. And when you're doing your tableside flambe, bring a little bit of that sauce out to the edge, like that, and you're up and running. Now you're going to need, you can take this sauce and bring it up. It'll make it a little more spectacular, but be careful not to spill that over the side, all right? It's a beautiful way to baste those bananas. Well, as you can see there, yeah, that will take you by surprise. And what needs to be said is the longer you allow the alcohol to start releasing when there's a lot of it in a small amount of liquid, a lot of alcohol vapor gets released at once. Be very careful when lighting that because it can flash. That vapor in the air, that cloud can light up. This reminds me of an episode of Frasier. I used to watch that show and it was so funny. But Frasier and his brother Niles, they purchased a restaurant. Well, in the throes of everything going wrong in the restaurant, as we all expected it to do, Frasier and Niles and somebody else kept adding more rum to, or excuse me, it was more brandy to the Cherry's Jubilee. And nobody was really paying attention to what everybody else was doing. But the thing was heating in a chafing dish. Well, you don't do that because when it comes time to light it, or it may spontaneously combust, it's not a good scene. Next thing you know, the restaurant goes kaboom. Everything is scorched. The sprinklers have gone off. It's quite the funny scene. But it is a good example of be careful how you use alcohol when you're cooking with it. There needs to be some thought process in this. After all, we're dealing with an active ingredient and one that is flammable, all right? So got to be careful with this. Other than that, please enjoy the whimsical and wonderful things that you can make using alcohol. And if you don't drink alcohol and you're not afraid of having it in your house, well, go ahead. For instance, I keep bottles of beer here. It's not because I want to drink it. I keep the bottles of beer here to make beer batter. Okay? Just that simple. There's a lot of things we can do with this stuff. Please experiment. Please enjoy. Try those recipes with alcohol. And, well, if you have questions, comments, or anything you want to say about it, drop them down below. I'm sure I'm going to hear plenty about this one. And, folks, thank you very much for watching. Something else I wanted to mention before I'm finished here. Of course, there's my Patreon. If you haven't ever seen that, please take a look. Patreon is a funding source for people who are in the arts. Now, I'm not touting them. They're not paying me. It's not a promotion. But I use Patreon. I'm on Patreon, Stuart Trotter. So if you would, take a look at that. And there's a link in the description. There's also a new website that I've started, which is satrotter.com. That's me, okay? So take a look at the website. That's all about me and what I do. All right. Thank you very much, folks. You have a good day, and, well, please share this video and enjoy what you're cooking next. Bye-bye.